If you found this video enjoyable, please leave a like and hell, even subscribe if you want to. It only takes 2 clicks, and push that notification bell just to get the messages for my videos. That would be greatly appreciated. So a bit of context about this video. Previously in my channel's history, I had made a antagonist video talking about all the villains in JoJo's Bizarre Adventure and kind of giving my thoughts about all of them. And it kind of led to a healthy discussion about Toru later on in the future. So I thought I'd go full circle and talk about the protagonist of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, basically the Joestar bloodline. And straight up going first in chronological order, of course, Jonathan Joestar of Phantom Blood. So what about Jonathan do I like? Well, to kind of get it off first, he's okay. He is Araki's third creation of a story for Shonen Jump. Araki played it really safe with him. He is the archetype of just being a pure-hearted hero, good versus evil, really safe for the 80s. And you have to remember, during the 80s, it really wasn't that complex, so Jonathan can just, be simple. And simple works. I'm not saying that's a bad thing or a good thing, but, to start a franchise of 8 parts, Jonathan is a pretty good start. He is the best 6 out of 10 I can give to a character. He is above average. He is good enough. I like Jonathan. He's not bad. He is cool. I like his Hamon thing. I like his whole rivalry with Dio. It's really cool. I like Jonathan. 6 out of 10, baby. He's really cool. The one bad thing I can say about Jonathan that I do really nitpick a lot about part 1, mostly 4, is that it's only 44 chapters long. In manga, that's really short, and I feel like Araki probably could have fleshed it out, but he was a young author at the time, so he kind of backpedaled just a little bit. But we lead into part 2 with Joseph. So with Joseph from part 2, Battle Tendency, I actually have a lot to say about him. He is a progressional hero. He kind of catches the baton of the previous character behind him, and what I mean by that is Joseph is kind of the evolution of Jonathan in many ways. While you can view Jonathan as a very basic character, kind of like a brick house, you can describe Joseph as a mansion. He says cool one-liners. He's kind of built up to be this prodigy that evolves past Jonathan as kind of being the descendant of him, and is just overall just a cooler character in terms of style, art style, character design. He just overall looks way better than Jonathan. Not to mention his parts just a lot more thematically written differently compared to part 1, and it is overall a drastic redesign of the franchise, truly. And thanks to part 2, we get to see a lot of the classic tropes in JoJo because of Joseph. Taking it from a writing perspective, this is what a writer wants. You make a character before that's okay, but then you build upon its flaws and remove the stuff that you didn't need previously and overall make a better character. That is the progression from Jonathan to Joseph. Part 2's cool. I don't think it's the best part, but it works too. A lot of fans will say that part 2 got them hooked, and I see that everywhere. And I know why. Joseph's cool. I get it. He's funny. He has cool one-liners. Joseph is the OG, and he's fun to read and watch. He's just overall great. So moving on to Stardust Crusaders, we finally get into Jotaro Cujo, a personal favorite of mine. So if we look at the 2 previous protagonists, we clearly see that Araki's really young in how he writes his characters. He's barely an artist and a writer trying to find his footing with his franchise. And while Jonathan's really a base to work everything off of, and you can see Joseph as this kind of progression of Araki's writing skills in its total honesty, Jotaro is the character he's truly wanted to write about, and he's also stated that in interviews, and you truly do get to see this. Jotaro, if I was gonna clear cut it and give it to you straight, is just a love letter to Clint Eastwood and old school Western movies, bar none. Everything from how he's written, how he talks, from just his stance and poses, and even Star Platinum just kind of being a gun, is just all I call back to Clint Eastwood, and just kind of that old school telling, at least in America, of action heroes who just don't give a shit and are just gonna save the day regardless. He's just badass. Jotaro's just badass personified. He's just cool. And I know people have a problem with that, oh, he's just a stoic, emotionalist, brick wall. But I'm gonna be real with you. I like that. I think that's cool. I like that, that kind of storytelling. I get the whole, good versus evil thing, but Jotaro just not caring and just wants to save the day because, justice has to be upheld like Clint Eastwood is just so cool to me. I like that heavily. And no wonder Araki uses Jotaro from now on as a base model for all future protagonists going on forward. There is just something about Jotaro that is just so cool that he cannot forget about. He is the OG front page poster boy for this franchise, bar none. I'm not debating that. Quick recap. So the first 3 parts allowed Araki to write and fully express himself through manga. You know, we see part 1, he's doing things a little bit roughly, trying to figure it out. Part 2, he figures out how to write better characters, better stories, you know, character designs, etc., etc. Part 3, he's able to fully express himself and actually tell stories pretty well with a large, you know, cast of characters, introduce new power systems like stands and remove Hamon, but still leave it in there just for the OG fans and show it pretty well. But now we move on to part 4, and this is where things kind of get really interesting with Josuke Higashikata in Diamond is Unbreakable. With the previous 3 parts, the hero has to defeat the villain, because if the villain wins, they're going to take over the world or do something really crazy. But with part 4, the theme has completely changed. It's in a small town, the villain is not crazy, he just wants a simple life, which leads to the protagonist being a little bit different. Josuke, compared to previous protagonists, is not a grand hero. Josuke is a hometown hero. He's just a high schooler in school, doing childish things, having a stand, but still just kind of acting like a kid, which leads to a very interesting protagonist. Unless you're like my homie Mask, who just doesn't like Josuke, and I think you're stupid because of it, you loser. Jokes aside, I think Josuke is really relatable to everybody.
That asshole.
Everybody was a kid at one point. Everybody maybe went to high school if you're not in America like me. I think Josuke is just one of those characters that you can just sit down and read, love his hijinks, love his action and adventure, and he's overall a nice guy. Like, come on. How can you hate the nice guy, dog? Like, really? He's the most caring stand user. You gotta love Josuke, bro. He's so goofy, and I love his hair. Amazing character. Overall, one of my favorites. Now, this is probably going to be the only time in the video where I kind of go, about a Joestar. We're going to be talking about Giorno Giovanna from Golden Wind. Now, this isn't because he's a bad character. By no means. I think Giorno's actually pretty well done for what he's trying to be. It's that the fact of the matter is he doesn't have a lot of, screen time. Part 5 is a part in which everybody gets screen time. It is a group, a mob type of centric manga, at least for this part of the series, being heavily influenced by major movies like The Godfather, Goodfellas, and all those type of Italian type of movies where it's more about the group and not the individual. And because of that, Giorno doesn't really get a lot of screen time or spotlight, very similar to Jonathan, unironically. But Giorno's scenes where he's, portrayed as a very nice and kind person, being the, reflection of Jonathan, while also having the deal elements every once in a while to show how ruthless he can be, going back into the whole mob thing. But, everybody gets their shared screen time, so we don't really truly get to see Giorno just being this overall badass. And that kind of feel like that kind of sucks for him, at least in the long run. But I don't think he's a bad character. I just think there's a lot of other Joestars that just kind of do it at least better than him. And I don't blame Araki for this because, during part 5's run, he was a little bit depressed because Shonen Jump is an asshole to its authors. I'm not gonna lie. So Giorno's okay. I already made a video about him, but he's okay. I'll give him like a 5. So moving on to probably what people want to hear, part 6, Stone Ocean's Jolene Cujo. She currently is going through her adaptation of her part. A lot of people seem to be very happy about her and very intrigued about her character. So what is my take on the first and only female Joestar, main protagonist wise? How do I feel about her? I heavily like Jolene, not just because she's a girl, of course, but I think she represents something that the Joestar bloodline kind of needed in a way. You see, all previous protagonists so far have been kind of gifted their abilities. They are all prodigies, massively powerful stand users with extremely powerful abilities. Crazy Diamond, Gold Experience, Star Platinum, the World, of course, are all monster level characters and stand users within the verse power scaling wise. But Jolene isn't, kind of. Jolene doesn't really have anything. She's not a prodigy stand user. She's not this like hyper intelligent monster, Hamon, whatever, so on and so forth. Jolene's kind of almost the most regular Joestar, at least at the beginning of her part. Very kind of rivaling Josuke, but Josuke of course had to stand at the beginning of his part. But Jolene's kind of normal, but very similar to Jotaro. She eventually kind of gets to this point where she earns street cred. She becomes this prisoner of incredible ability as she fights through the prison, eventually coming to Whitesnake and Poochie, beating them, and eventually kind of almost gaining this same reputation and power, kind of very similar to Jotaro, which is poetic in a way, kind of being, she is the daughter to one of the strongest stand users on the planet. it. So she kind of has to earn her keep in a really big way, and I think Araki portrays her really well. And for the people that say she doesn't have a character and there's no progression in part 6, bro, I know you sped run through all of part 6 to get to part 7, you loser. Jolene's good, I like her whole group is fantastic. Jolene's a good Joestar. I think she's my number 4. So when it comes to the original universe, I think all the Joestars within that world are pretty good. I think there's a few faults with all of them, individually speaking, but overall, they're all good protagonists. I think everybody can find at least a couple good things about all of them pretty well. So moving on into the Steel Ball Run universe. Now this is where things kind of get interesting, at least for me. Johnny Joestar is probably one, if not my favorite protagonist in all of anime and manga, just because he's just so cool, dude. Holy crap. What can I say about him? I shouldn't really spoil things for part 7, just because I know people are gonna probably watching this because of part 6, but oh my god, Johnny's so cool. Holy shit. To keep it brief, Johnny Joestar is one, if not Araki's greatest magnum opuses, just because no Joestar goes through a story like Johnny. Johnny goes from a rich, know-it-all kid who's kind of a jackass, unlike the original Joestars, who are all kind of good-natured. Johnny isn't. Johnny's an ass. And because of this, he grows up in a really different way, leading to him not being good, and he has to go through this journey in Steel Ball Run to eventually become, you know, a person that realizes he was an ass, but kind of still is even after the part ends. And I'm just gonna leave it off like that because there's a lot more things I could say in depthly, but everything from Tusk, his stand, which shows the acts he goes through, and just himself and his interactions with Funny Valentine are just amazing. So what can I say about Josuke from part 8 JoJolion? It's kind of weird for me, at least in a sense, and let me kind of explain. So for a long bit, I had Toru on the brain, and I was just thinking about him for the later half of JoJolion, and it kind of led me to thinking that, you know, Gappy wasn't really that fundamentally different from Josuke. But on later thinking of it, he does have aspects of original Josuke of being that kind of hopeful, you know, kid kind of guy. But kind of thinking about it for a bit longer here, Gappy is kind of a force of change, like a force of goodwill upon things is the way I kind of interpret it. Like he just shows up in Morio and is just overall this kind of like glowing hope for a lot of these characters, mostly for the Higashikatas, and kind of changes things. He breaks the Higashikata curse and, you know, tries to save his mom just because he doesn't have anything else to do, and that's the only thing he kind of knows and is kind of supposedly kind of trying to do, at least in the beginning of JoJolion. Overall, I would kind of say that Gappy is just kind of a force of good nature, at least in my interpretation of him, which doesn't make him bad by any means. Well, that is my opinions on the Joestars. Like, comment, share, subscribe, follow me on Twitter, stay hydrated. I hope you have a wonderful day, ladies and gentlemen.